Phil, let me start with you in terms of what we're seeing here. You know, while the world was focused on what was going on in the Gaza Strip, while the world was focused on MH17 and what was going on in eastern Ukraine, ISIS was moving ahead, it seems like, at lightning speed.
I think that's right. I think we've seen, since we last talked about this at some length, a fundamental change that's really profound. When we were talking about this before, a month or two ago, we're talking about a U.S. decision about whether to side with Nouri al-Maliki, who's seen as a leader of Iraq who does not represent Iraqi minorities. The question about intervention had to do with how would we be perceived if we sided with someone who's viewed by many as a corrupt leader of Iraq. The story now is, forget about Nouri al-Maliki. Do we want to intervene in what is a rapidly unfurling humanitarian crisis? One comment, Aaron, remember, a year ago, we were talking about whether to intervene in favor of Syrian civilians when Bashar al-Assad was massacring them. We chose not to, and I think a lot of people are saying, let's not replay that story.
General Marks, what does that mean? It seems like the only thing that's a little bit different this time is that there are 40 Americans in Erbil. There are 245 military personnel, Americans, in Iraq, which the president put in there to try to stabilize the situation and provide advice. But if they are indeed at risk, would that then justify the United States doing military strikes? And can those strikes be surgical, or is that the slippery slope towards a combat situation?
Well, Aaron, that's exactly the point. The United States can intervene at will. I don't think they need any justification at this point. They have a partner in Iraq, albeit very shaky, and a very tenuous relationship with the government in Baghdad, which is unfortunate. But we have to right that, and we got to make sure we can stand that up. The fact that Americans might be in harm's way certainly gives sufficient justification, albeit not necessary, to go do something to extract those folks. But what the real issue is the United States should not at this point say what they're not going to do. This could be an escalation, and we could be, as Phil described, be in the middle of not only a humanitarian disaster, but an increasing challenge to Baghdad. Those are two separate issues. We've seen humanitarian disasters in our past, and we've sat back. What are we going to do at this point? But the other decision is Baghdad at risk? Is Iraq in toto at risk as well, based on ISIS's advances? And we could say, yeah, they're on the slope to achieving that right now.
Phil, the question, though, facing the White House tonight in terms of whether to strike, though, is whether that is central to the national security interests of the United States. Has that changed in the past month? Is ISIS rising in Iraq now a direct security threat to the United States?
I think when you look at the history of insurgent groups and the terrorist groups that I followed for a quarter century at the agency, this is pretty much unprecedented. You watch what happened in the 1990s in North Africa when insurgent groups were prominent. They were turned back by government forces. You saw Taliban emerge, obviously, in the 1990s until 2001 in Afghanistan. But their focus was not in the United States. That was solely typically the focus of al-Qaeda. I think this is a new problem that the White House is struggling to try to understand, and I don't think there's a precedent for understanding this yet. One final comment. When you sit in that decision-making chair at the White House, 911 changed something, and that is, if you see an insurgent group emerging that potentially might attack America, how long do you want to wait? Do you want to wait for that attack to happen or not, or do you want to prevent it by striking early?
Yeah,
Aaron, can I jump in to follow up on Phil's comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Phil. The point is we have a plethora of challenges around North Africa and in the greater Mideast. The issue becomes exactly that. What's the trigger event, and when do you start to act? And I think we're at the point where you begin now to chip away at these challenges, or they become much more robust and empowered going down the road.
All right.